Hey, y'all. Welcome to Questions You Didn't Ask. Did you know that this very spot could be showcasing your business or event? Whether it's an audio ad on our podcast or a visual ad on our new YouTube station, or even both, we've got the space for you. Niasha Fray Consulting is reaching a growing audience of over 1,000 leaders who are passionate about health equity, social justice, and civil rights activism. These are professionals just like you, working across higher education, research, healthcare, nonprofit, government, and even public health sectors. If you're ready to get your message in front of a dedicated and engaged audience, send me an email at Niasha Fray Consulting, LLC at gmail.com. Let's talk about how we can help you connect with the people who need to hear about your services and products that advance health equity and wellness. Don't miss out. Get in the mix and let's make an impact together. Welcome back to Questions You Didn't Ask, the show where we peel back the layers, break the silence, and have the conversations that too often go ignored. This is season 4, series 2, and it's titled Trippin: Black Men, Mental Health, and Movement. This series is for anybody who's ever carried trauma in their body, questions in their mind, and still find a way to move through it. It's all about Black men, real ones, whole ones, complicated ones, and how their stories, pain, joy, and recovery journeys matter. This is a conversation about movement and stillness, about sobriety and storytelling, about what happens when Black people, especially Black men, step off the grid and into their healing. I'm your host, Niasha Fray, and I bring to this conversation my background in psychology, clinical psychology, public health, and health behavior. My professional journey began as a substance use counselor in Manhattan's Lower East Side, where I witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of substances like cocaine, heroin, and alcohol on individuals and communities. These experiences deepened my compassion for those struggling with addiction, understanding that systemic pressures like American capitalism, institutionalized racism, and complex social environments often make illicit drugs seem like a viable coping mechanism. But healing is possible. And sometimes healing starts with stepping outside, literally. Did you know that Black Americans are less likely to receive mental health treatment than their white counterparts? In 2022, only 15% of non-Hispanic Black adults receive mental health care, compared to 27% of non-Hispanic white adults. This gap isn't just about stigma. It's about access, affordability, and a healthcare system that hasn't always served Black communities equitably. And the consequences are devastating. The suicide rate among Black or African American populations has been rising. In 2011, the rate was 5.5 per 100,000. By 2020, it climbed to 7.7 per 100,000. This increase is alarming, especially when we consider that suicide rates among Black youth have nearly doubled in the past decade. But here's something powerful. Access to nature is linked to better mental health outcomes. According to research from the American Psychological Association, spending time outdoors can lower cortisol levels, reduce anxiety, and even improve cognitive function. Yet, Black communities often face disparities in access to nature, from environmental injustices to a lack of self-welcoming outdoor spaces. And this has consequences. Did you know that the life expectancy of Black men in the US is significantly lower than that of Black women? According to the CDC, Black men have a life expectancy of 67.7 years, compared to 74.9 years for Black women. Factors like chronic stress, systemic racism, and limited access to health-promoting environments, including nature, play a role in this gap. That's why this conversation matters. In this episode, I sit down with Charles E. Chambers. Charles, the fat cat, Chambers is a brand developer and founder of Set Trippin Outdoor Adventures, a movement focused on reconnecting our communities with the outdoors through adventure, culture, and the freedom to explore, play, and thrive in nature. As a lifelong traveler and creative storyteller, Charles brings mindfulness, design, and cultural pride together to inspire connection, adventure, and community. His work invites Black folks to see the outdoors not just as escape, but as a place to thrive. As someone rooted deeply in public health, I spend my life working on the structural side of health equity, social determinants, systemic barriers, policy, and program design. Charles works on the deeply personal side, using his life as a canvas to explore what healing can look like through movement, mindfulness, and entrepreneurship. This series brings our worlds together. Together, we explore the social determinants of health, the conditions in which people are born, grow, work, live, worship, and age that influence health outcomes. And we challenge the idea that outdoor activities, hiking, camping, fishing, are white things. Black people have always been connected to the land. From Solomon Brown, the first African-American employee of the Smithsonian Institution, to Charles Young, the first Black superintendent of a national park, to Rue Mapp, founder of Outdoor Afro, Black conservationists have paved the way for a new generation reclaiming outdoor spaces. Today, Black-led organizations like Outdoor Afro and Black Men Hike are reshaping the narrative, proving that nature is for everyone. Because whether we're talking about therapy or camping, hiking trails or healing trauma, this conversation is about liberation through land, access, and the stories we tell ourselves and each other. Let's get into it. Thank you so much, Charles, for being here today on Questions You Didn't Ask. You know, I've been looking forward to this conversation with you. I know my guests are pumped up and ready to hear this amazing discussion. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. So my first question that I love to ask my guests is just tell my audience, why in the world did you decide to join me on Questions You Didn't Ask today?
Right. You know, I like that question. The straight answer is because you asked me to. I mean, this isn't, but I came on because, it's about showing up and being present. So this was another opportunity for me to do so. You asked, and so here I am.
Awesome. So for my audience out there, for those of you who are looking for partnerships and opportunities, just remember, ask is one of the most important things to do, is just put yourself out there and ask the question. You oftentimes will get the response that you need, right? And that you want. So let's start off with you sharing with my audience and with me too, a little bit more about your personal journey and how it led you to founding Set Trippin Outdoor Adventures.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this journey had actually started back in 2020. That's when I sobered up. I quit drinking, quit smoking. And it wasn't a choice that I said, I'm going to quit drinking and smoking. It was the thing of, it came down to a choice of whether I wanted to live or die. For a long time, the drinking, it was no longer serving me, and my health was just horrible. I had chronic migraines. My balance was off. I could barely walk. I should say that I worked for myself, and I would work from home. I think what I was doing was isolating myself from the rest of the world, and I was quite comfortable with it, sitting in it. I thought that was living until it wasn't. Then it became this thing that consumed me, and I wanted free from that. And I tried quitting myself for the longest. When I say the longest, I mean years. Like, okay, I'm gonna try it this way, I'm gonna try it that way. And it wasn't until I asked for help, that actually a change happened. And I wanted to make sure I mentioned that person, Yolanda Higgins, that's my cousin. I watched her get sober and I was so inspired. It showed me that it can be done, because her and I used to be drinking buddies, you know, right. And so it was a thing of, here's a person that I love dearly, and she's right there in front of me, and I'm watching her life change literally. And I wanted that. And so in 2020, this was right around the time of the pandemic, that was the only thing I could do at that moment, was to go to the hospital. And it wasn't a light thing. I was in intensive care for 3 days, and then in the hospital for a couple of more days. It's that whole year of the first year when I stopped was really just 24/7 around recovery from meetings, hospital, doctor visits. That's the other thing. Before I sobered up, I wasn't going to the doctor. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't exercising. So this tripping thing that I do now, it's about all the things opposite of how I was living before, and that I was living in isolation. The work that I do helped me not have to deal with the public. And so I had this buffer between me and folks. And so once I sobered up, it became the question of, well, okay, now I'm sober. So how you want to live? What are you going to do? And I wanted to live now that I got this life back, right? And so then I started looking at all the things that I had always wanted to do, things that I like to do. And I just started checking off that list. I put together, I sort of combined them, and that's what this tripping is about. I decided I would go on this, I would travel. I was thinking that the traveling would help put me in situations that would help me face reality on real time in its terms, to get me out of the routine, and to get me out there in terms of interacting with people. And the traveling helps me stay in the moment. You know, it's a beautiful thing. I tell you, it's exceeded my expectations of what I thought this would be. So for the last 3 years, what I've been doing is in January, I load up my Jeep and I take off for the 6-month trip. I'll loosely plan a few destinations, but for the most part, I deliberately leave it loose so that I could just pretty much go with the flow wherever the energy was. I wasn't uptight about any type of time schedule, other than I'll return to Cleveland in June, and which happens to be the same month as my birthday. It all just fits nicely. So this being my 3rd year, last year, what I did was, it was life-changing. Last year, what I did was I started a company that helps other people go through what I've been experiencing. So I've been putting together outdoor adventure activities for groups of people to come out and experience nature for what it has. It's something about being out there in the forest that, for me, it's calming. It's like me being a designer, I'm real sensitive to my environment visually and physically, emotionally. I think I feel more than I see. So in other words, when I'm in the city, to me, what I hear is noise, and what I see is chaos and just clutter. And to me, visually, being in the city is, to put it frank, often is ugly. But out in the forest, everything just flows. I mean, between the sounds, the colors, it's a whole different space out there. So the tripping company, Set Trippin, I put that together to share what I've learned.
That is so very powerful. The first question, me saying, you know, why did you join? You said, because you asked. And then the second question, one of the most pivotal points in your process, in your journey, was that you asked for help, right? And then you asked yourself again, once you reclaimed your life, what am I going to do with this new found life that I have, and how am I going to live it differently? Right. And then you asked yourself again, how can I share this with other people? Because this is not just something that I needed, but to avoid, it sounds like the continuous isolation of I'm going to go on these journeys. You're also inviting people in, asking people to join you, or asking people if this is what they also need and how you can facilitate that for them.
It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. It really is. And I applaud you for being so bold to reclaim your life, right? And to use that list of things that you always wanted to do in real time to redefine who you were and not just allow it to stay in this space of a dream in one day, but to make it real in current time so that you could experience it and that you realize that you deserved experiencing it.
Yes. And now it's on steroids. It's a practice every day of living that way. It's a choice every day, every second of me being sober. And to be honest with you, I think the life that I have now was the life that I wanted to have in my mind when I was drinking, but the alcohol never even got me nowhere close to how my life is today. And in terms of the connection with other people, the experiences that I have, I call it artificial. So I can't see myself going back to that lifestyle of where I was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's powerful. So because we're talking a little bit, we're talking quite a bit about your journey, in your experience, how do systemic factors like racism and economic pressures contribute to substance use in Black communities?
Of course, that's a loaded question. I mean, there's tons of stuff inside that question. And you're absolutely right. You're spot on that I think there's this weight that's on us being our people. And I think it's different. I think it's different for women. There's a pressure that's on us. And it's real. It really is. I think that's why a lot of folks turn to the alcohol or that type of behavior. I think it's a learned thing. I believe that's how I started. I grew up with a family. It's a loving family. And when we got together, there would always be alcohol involved. And so I always thought that, that was just a part of life. Everybody drank. And I thought that's just what you do when you grow up. That it's become so much a part of our culture or our thing, and it's harming us.
If you're enjoying the show as much as we love creating it, consider showing your support by buying us a cup of coffee. Visit buymeacoffee.com/Niasha Fray O. That's buymeacoffee.com/Niasha Fray O. All one word. Each cup is just $5, and every single one helps us continue to produce, develop, and sustain the high-quality content you've come to expect from Questions You Didn't Ask. Thank you for your continued support, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah. I often, think about how, and I am a drinker, so I have to be very honest about that, in that, and I've also dealt with the impacts of alcoholism in my personal and professional life. And that has given me some different insight into alcohol use, substance use, and how we are so socialized and oftentimes pressured into using alcohol. We think about peer pressure when we're going into puberty, when we're teenagers, preteens, all that good stuff, health class. If there's still a health class, I hope there is. My health class was, constantly talking about things like peer pressure and how to avoid peer pressure. But what I saw happening in my adult years was that peer pressure continues. And sometimes it continues in the workspace. Some of my close friends, family members, I saw developing and having an active, alcohol problem because of their professional networks and what was accepted, what was expected from their peers, from their boss, the social environment that they were in. One example was in banking. When I lived in New York, I had a close friend who was, worked for the big companies. I'm not going to name any names and wind up in trouble, but some of those big companies that we think about on Wall Street, and the idea that they had carts of liquor that would come around during the day, that it was expected that they would go out after work and drink, and not just have a drink, but to drink a lot. The fact that, on another hand, I've heard in the sales industry in particular, there is a lot of drug and substance use. And so we oftentimes think about, even the pressure of racism within workplaces, where it's like you need to be a part of the in crowd, right? You need to be close to your boss in order to get that promotion. And so in order to do that, you have to kind of emulate those same cultures, those same values, those same behaviors in order to have that quote unquote quality time with those people, in order to aid you in your process to advance. And then, not to mention, like we talked about, just our family structures, traditions. I know that I have some traditions related to alcohol in my family, and a lot of it is festive. A lot of it is, paired with very good times and celebration. And some of it is paired with, when we're sad and grieving, and methods to get numb some of that pain and help us to get through, quote unquote, some of that pain. And so those things play themselves out in that some people actually struggle with that alcohol use, and outside of those isolated, or what may be perceived as isolated events, continue into day-to-day functioning. And so I just really appreciate where you're coming from in regard to how these different communities and groups and networks that we're connected to, and how that contributes to alcoholism, and how accepted it is, as opposed to what we consider when we think about cocaine or crack, or even heroin, and the whole pandemic that we're facing in that regard of substances, or even how people conceive of now the challenge is, we have these gangs that are pushing drugs, as opposed to, no, it's right there on the corner. Like, it's in every ad, it's in every movie, it's everywhere you go. So let's think about, how are we creating spaces where people can fulfill health and joy without this alcohol or drugs encroaching on that experience.
Right. And I could give you another example. I was in the Marine Corps, and my first year in, I went overseas, and I walk into the squad bay. And the first thing I see is beer machines. They actually had beer machines in the barracks. And I was just fascinated by that to this day. Like, why would they put a vending machine of beer inside the barracks? It's like, so in the Marine Corps, and probably the other services, it's not written down anywhere, but it's this undertone of party hard, like it's your last day. And so here the Marine Corps get all these young individuals that are healthy and clear-headed, and to me, they're like a factory. I think that I actually have this contempt for the Marine Corps, because I believe that there's more that they could do to not have that type of environment. And it really could be the opposite. They could be taking these young men and really helping them develop into the people that they should be. Why they don't, I don't know, but I believe it's deliberate. I went in the Marine Corps with the idea that, okay, within the 4 years, the game plan was I would have my associate by the time I got out. The first, in other words, I would work and go to school to sort of make my time. My first 3 years in the Marine Corps was just a blur. It was like I joined, and then next thing I knew, I was waking up 3 years later, realizing that I'm getting out next year. And so then I started looking into going to school finally. And when I looked into that, they do offer the courses, but the courses are crap. And the
Mm.
are the credits that I earned while I was in the Marine Corps didn't even transfer over to the
Oh, wow.
schools. It would be these one room type of facilities that are, I guess what I'm trying to point out the difference between the things that the Marine Corps do to help build up the individuals, like they'll have these elaborate enlisted men clubs, e-clubs, where it's state of the art. And then for the education system programs that they have going on, it's pretty much antiquated type of situations that no one even uses the services. And so I believe it's because of the environment that they foster while you're in there. I don't think they want people to develop. But I just wanted to mention that for people thinking about the military. So when my younger cousins ask me about joining the military, I tell them don't. The divorce rate in the military is through the roof. The suicide rate is through the roof. It's an environment that's not, well, that's toxic, actually, put it. If you don't have to, it wasn't all bad for me. I was at a time when I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. And so I thought that would be some positive time I could spend in the Marine Corps figuring it out. But the racism and all of the other isms is alive and well in the military. Not to be, if you are going to go in there, to be clear about what you're going to do and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another major area and pathway, a profession, training ground that we have to be very honest with ourselves, with our youth about what are those options really yield, what do they really look like, and what are the things that you need to be cognizant of if that winds up being the best option for you. If you are in there, you need to kind of come equipped and be very honest about what are some of the pitfalls that might come along the way. So one of the other questions that I have is, how has, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how would you say reconnecting with nature? So we talked about, our families, we've talked about traditions, we've talked about workspaces, societal problems, and all those things. But how has nature, reconnecting with nature, played a role in your healing and your recovering process?
It's played a major role in it. For me, when I'm out there, it puts me in the moment, in the present. It's hard to be wondering about if I left the iron on when you're out in the middle of the forest. To me, it slows things down. It's everything. I mean, it's where life makes sense for me. I've had some of the best sleep out there, and the food always tastes better out there, no matter what it is. I'm not sure why. And then also, I've noticed that when I take groups out, it happens routinely that my job when I take groups out is really I focus on the safety of what we're doing and everyone being prepared. And it's really nature that does the magic when we're out there in terms of having groups bond together. I've often seen issues that people had inside come out just because the only difference is that we're out in the middle of the forest. It's something about that experience that does that.
That's interesting. It kind of helps people shed some of the outer parts, distractions, right, and kind of focus in on what really matters in that moment.
Exactly. It also teaches life lessons, like being out there. You can't take everything with you. And so it's a thing of you're committing by saying, okay, I'm only going to take this. So there's a commitment involved. Often what I learned out in nature translates directly to how I behave here in the city. I learned that there's a lot of things inside the city that I don't need, that I could survive without. I don't have to have, the flat screen TV and the 100 channel cable channel. living with just a few things can be just as fulfilling as being in the city. Actually, to me, it's better out there, as to having everything I would want inside the city. It's a huge difference.
So kind of getting to the core of the issue is shedding away all of these extraneous distractions,
Right.
and being able to focus on what's really important, what's really necessary, and redefining what happiness and satisfaction is.
Right.
So one of the other things that you mentioned about your journey is related to isolation. And one of the things that I understand is that isolation can be a common experience among Black men. How has isolation impacted your mental health and your entrepreneurial journey? It seems like your, concepts of isolation, have either been a motivator or the
Right.
opposite.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you're right. You're pointing out there's two different types of isolations that I've been talking about. And there was the one when I was drinking, when I was in my addiction, I'd isolated myself. And I guess the difference is it was more like, I think I was hiding when I was in my addiction. It was an isolation where it was avoiding being present, avoiding showing up, avoiding engagement, avoiding, it wasn't really living, avoiding life, like, just kind of hanging out on the fringe. And to be honest with you, back then I was quite cool with that. And in fact, I used to call myself the fat cat in the back. Like, I didn't have to be out in front and with all these folks. In my job, I'm working with people with, well, I'm connected to several events throughout the year. I could be out in the middle of all these experiences with people, but I chose not to. And I was cool with that. So that type of isolation was more along the toxic kind of, that's not really living. Actually, I think that's just dying, waiting to die. Whereas in today's me being sober, it's more like, I wouldn't even use the word isolation. But it's the same meaning. But I guess the way it serves me now is that I use that time when I'm solo to check myself. I repeat this process that I've gone through with sobriety every second, every hour, every day. Acceptance, taking self-inventory on myself. There's a number of things that I just constantly do when I'm in nature or isolated. It gives me time to sort through these ideas, meditating, to sort of recenter myself on these trips. And it's not used in that toxic way that I used to do before, but really more to elevate me, to clear my lenses of how I see things. It gives me time to reflect on life. More so today, it propels me forward than it does hold me back.
Yeah. And it's interesting how, when you first started talking about isolation in the midst of the addiction, it was almost like you were just existing. Like you said,
Right.
you're kind of just waiting to die, and that's really powerful. Because I think a lot of people that are going to watch this or listen to it are going to be able to identify with that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of us who are just existing or waiting to die, just kind of, checking the boxes, just kind of going through the motions, right? But then,
Right. I used to say, well, I'm going to die from something. I might as well, live this way, do my thing. I'd rather go out this way than other ways. I remember like reading the disclaimer on a package of cigarettes. It says it's toxic for you. And so I'm smoking a cigarette and reading it. Yeah.
Right.
And the alcohol, I knew it was hurting me. It was damaging, but I figured, life sucks. This is just the way that it is. And, so be it. I think what happened, I really start to feel the weight of my drinking. I mean, I drink a lot. When I say I drink a lot, I drink a lot. And whatever you think is a lot, double that. I drink
wow.
all day, every day for decades. And well, okay, to put it short, basically it's a fuck it attitude. Fuck it. Doesn't really matter. Fuck it. And today, it does matter for me. It's showing up and being present in a clear, crystal clear mind is everything. It's everything. Wow. I ask myself a question. It's sort of a rhetorical question. So it's really a conversation that I have with myself. And so I'll ask myself, so if I knew that the world would end a day tomorrow or 2 or 3 days from now, would you drink? Would I drink? Would I pick up? What would I do? And the answer to that changes. So I sort of ask myself that when I'm checking in with myself, to just give as a barometer how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about. And I would like to think that I wouldn't. I would like to think that those last days, I want to be clear-minded to enjoy those last time with a clear head, as opposed to a fog, drinking myself into oblivion and not even remembering or engage with any of it.
So let's discuss this term that I understand gets under your skin, like irritates you. Functional alcoholism.
Yeah.
Why doesn't this term resonate with you, and what alternative language do you prefer? Let's talk about what is functional alcoholism, or the perception of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a term that in our culture, I think that term right there is hurting us big time. It's sort of like saying it's okay to drink in excess. We acknowledge, okay, he's an alcoholic or she's an alcoholic, but she's functioning. She's doing all right. What? She has a job, a nice job, educated. How bad could it be? Well, yeah, it's bad. That's the thing about addictions. The addictions that don't tell on themselves does that to further itself. Those are the bad ones. Those are the ones that are killers, because the consequences are delayed. And that's what the alcoholism is doing to our community. And on the death certificate, they don't put down alcoholism. They say cirrhosis of the liver, or they'll define everything else other than alcohol. But the reality is the alcohol is killing our community. And a functioning alcoholic is not something to praise or oh, that's nice. That's saying, you're a survivor, as opposed to praising people for healing, using that same energy, a functioning alcoholic. So for me, when I hear that term, I just make it a point, even when I don't want to bring it up, don't feel like getting into the whole conversation, I just make it a point to say what I want to say about that term, to do my part, to say, hey, this is not cool. I had a cousin that passed away recently, and it was alcoholism, to put it bluntly. And so we're out hanging with each other, and we're not being upfront and honest with each other. Like when I was in my addiction, it was people telling me that, hey, this is a problem that helped me to see. So when I was in my funk, I couldn't really, my reality was distorted. So these outside voices, these words that we hear, help on that road to recover. The reality, the words that are wrapped in reality do help people on that course to reality, saying, hey, this is not cool and this isn't accepted. And because when we're in our addiction, we hear those words. We may not respond to them directly, but it's important to step up and share how you feel and express your point about these things that are hurting us.
That's a wrap on this episode of Questions You Didn't Ask. I'm Niasha Fray, and it's been a privilege to speak with Charles Chambers, founder of Set Trippin Outdoor Adventures. His reflections on freedom, recovery, and reclaiming space set the stage for what's ahead. Join me next time as Trippin' Black Men, Land, and Liberation continues.